The hospital room was silent except for the steady hum of machines. Doctors moved in and out with defeated expressions, nurses lowered their eyes, and one of the richest men in the country lay motionless on a hospital bed. Billionaire tech investor Alaric Vance, a man who had built an empire worth billions, had just been declared clinically dead after suffering a sudden and devastating medical crisis. Every specialist had tried. Every treatment had failed. His family was already discussing funeral arrangements. Hope had vanished from the room. But before you hear what happened next, take a moment to like this video, comment below, share it with someone who believes in miracles, and subscribe to Kindness Studio if you believe kindness and second chances can change lives in ways we never expect. Outside the intensive care unit, expensive suits filled the hallways. Lawyers, executives, and distant relatives whispered among themselves about inheritance, business control, and future plans. Few of them seemed focused on the man they claimed to love. To many, Alaric had become a symbol of wealth rather than a human being. Meanwhile, on another floor of the same hospital, a young maid named Maribel Torres was finishing her cleaning duties. Life had never been easy for her. At 26 years old, she worked long hours just to provide food and shelter for herself and her 2-year-old son, Rowan. She lived in a tiny apartment on the edge of the city and often skipped meals so her child could eat better. Despite her hardships, Maribel carried something many wealthy people lacked. She carried kindness. Every morning before work, she would stop and help elderly neighbors carry groceries. Every evening, she read stories to Rowan before bed, even when she was exhausted. She taught him simple lessons about compassion, gratitude, and caring for others. Though she had very little, she gave whatever she could. That afternoon, after finishing her shift, Maribel stopped by the intensive care unit because she had been assigned to clean a nearby hallway. She noticed the unusual crowd and overheard staff discussing the billionaire who had been declared dead. Curious but respectful, she continued her work while holding Rowan's tiny hand. As she passed the room, Rowan suddenly stopped walking. The toddler stared through the glass window. His small face became unusually serious. Children often noticed things adults ignored. Rowan gently pulled away from his mother's hand and pointed toward Alaric's room. Maribel apologized to a nearby nurse and picked him up, but the child continued staring. Something about the still figure in the bed captured his attention completely. A few minutes later, while Maribel finished cleaning, Rowan managed to slip from her side and wandered toward the room again. Before anyone could stop him, he reached the doorway. The staff was too distracted by paperwork and final procedures to notice immediately. The toddler looked at the motionless billionaire and smiled. Then he did something nobody expected. He placed his tiny palm against the glass and began humming a soft tune. It was a simple lullaby Maribel sang every night before bedtime. The melody drifted through the quiet hallway. Several nurses paused. Maribel rushed forward, embarrassed, preparing to take Rowan away. But then something happened. A monitor inside the room flickered. One nurse frowned. Another stepped closer. The line that had remained still for several minutes suddenly showed the faintest movement. At first everyone assumed it was a machine error. Yet seconds later, another signal appeared. Then another. Within moments, alarms began sounding. Doctors rushed back into the room. Medical staff scrambled into action. Outside, confused family members stood frozen as physicians worked frantically around the billionaire's bed. Maribel clutched Rowan tightly, unsure of what was happening. The next hour felt endless. When the lead physician finally emerged, his face showed disbelief. Against every prediction and every medical expectation, Alaric Vance had regained vital signs. Nobody could explain it. The doctors described it as an extraordinarily rare event. They spoke about residual neurological activity and unusual recovery patterns. Yet even they admitted they had never witnessed anything like it. News spread quickly. Television stations reported the astonishing recovery. Social media exploded with theories. But while journalists focused on the billionaire, nobody noticed the maid and her child quietly returning home that evening. Weeks passed. Alaric remained hospitalized but continued improving. Each day brought more strength, Each day brought more questions. One question bothered him more than any other. Why had he survived? As his memory slowly returned, he recalled fragments of sound during the darkness. He remembered feeling lost, distant, and alone. Then he remembered hearing a gentle melody. A child's melody. Determined to uncover the truth, he ordered his staff to investigate. Eventually they found hospital security footage. The recording showed Maribel and little Rowan standing outside the room. When Alaric watched the video, tears filled his eyes. For years he had been surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Contracts. Investments. Influence. Power. Yet in his darkest moment, comfort had come from a poor mother and her toddler who expected absolutely nothing in return. Alaric insisted on meeting them. The meeting took place on a bright morning filled with sunlight streaming through hospital windows. Maribel arrived nervously, wearing her simple work uniform. Rowan sat quietly beside her, clutching a small stuffed bear. As Alaric listened to her story, he learned about the struggles she faced every day. He learned about unpaid bills, long shifts, and dreams she had sacrificed for her son. More importantly, he witnessed her humility. She never claimed credit. She never called what happened a miracle. She simply said she was glad he was alive. That answer affected Alaric more than anything else. After leaving the hospital months later, he made a decision that shocked the business world. Instead of expanding another company, he created a charitable foundation focused on helping working parents, single mothers, and low-income families. The first scholarship established by the foundation was named after Rowan. The first housing project was dedicated to Maribel. He also ensured that Maribel never had to struggle financially again, providing educational opportunities and a secure future for her family. Years later, thousands of families benefited from programs funded by the foundation. Children received education. Parents found stable housing. Communities gained resources they never had before. What began as a mysterious recovery became a movement of compassion that transformed countless lives. The billionaire often spoke at public events about the experience. He would tell audiences that money had built his empire, but kindness had saved his life. And perhaps the most remarkable part was that the greatest act of kindness had come from people who possessed almost nothing except love. If this story has touched your heart so far, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to Kindness Studio. Your support helps spread stories that remind us of the power of compassion. Special request: comment below with the words "Kindness changes lives" if you believe even the smallest act of compassion can create a ripple effect that changes the world. On a beautiful sunny afternoon many years later, Alaric stood in a community park filled with laughing children. Nearby, Maribel watched Rowan, now grown and thriving, helping younger kids on a playground. The billionaire smiled as he looked across the crowd. The doctors had once declared his story finished. They believed there was nothing more to write. Yet life had given him another chapter, not through wealth, power, or influence, but through the innocent kindness of a struggling mother and her child. In a world often obsessed with status and success, their simple act became proof that compassion can reach places medicine, money, and logic sometimes cannot. And that is why the greatest miracles are often born not from extraordinary people, but from ordinary hearts willing to care.